New York, a city so great, so unique, they had to name it 2 times. Is there any other city with a name like that? Certainly none other in the U.S. There's Oklahoma City in Oklahoma, but it's not quite the same. Everyone seems to have an idea of New York, but how many people know the city like a native does? First off, New York is the largest city in the U.S. with over 8 million residents in its 5 boroughs. The borough most people think about when they think of New York is Manhattan. That's the island with the most landmarks that make the city so famous. But there are 4 other boroughs. They are Brooklyn, Queens, the Bronx, and Staten Island. Brooklyn and Queens are technically part of Long Island. Staten Island, like Manhattan, is indeed an island, and the Bronx is the only borough that's connected to the mainland. So what about this most famous borough of Manhattan? What's great, and what should you know about it? And what should you do when you visit? Tourists spend more money on theater than on any other form of culture in New York. The commercial center of theater in the city and the country is Broadway. That's where the biggest, most famous, and most expensive plays and musicals are performed every day, sometimes twice a day on weekends. There you can see stage and film stars perform mostly musicals, but also plays. To beat the cost of tickets, savvy visitors head to the Big Red Staircase, where the TKTS discount ticket counters offer reduced price tickets to many shows, often for half price. But theater in New York isn't just about Broadway. There's Off-Broadway, which is where generally less expensive and more adventurous productions take place, usually west of 8th Avenue in the 40s or north and east of Midtown. Finally, there's Off-Broadway or Downtown Theater, which is mostly located, you guessed it, downtown or below Midtown. There, ticket prices are usually even less expensive, but the quality is often very high. What else is there to do in New York? How about visiting a museum? New York has so many, it's hard to keep count. There are art museums like the Metropolitan Museum of Art, the nation's largest, MoMA, or the Museum of Modern Art, science museums like the Museum of Natural History, and other specialized collections like the Museum of the City of New York. You want more info about performances? There's music galore in the city, from classical venues like the Metropolitan Opera House and Carnegie Hall to spaces like Madison Square Garden, where you can find the most popular musical acts performing in a massive space big enough for a basketball game. For a smaller, more intimate musical performance, head downtown to Bleecker Street, just south of Washington Square in Greenwich Village, where you will find the Bitter End, one of the cozy clubs that launched several folk rock acts back in the 60s, not least of all Bob Dylan. You still want more art? The hottest neighborhoods for galleries is West Chelsea, which is generally in the 20s and 30s west of 8th Avenue. There you will find some of the most cutting-edge contemporary art in the city and the country. After all that culture, you must be hungry. In that case, New York is your town. Starting from Lower Manhattan, there's Chinatown, which is simply massive and features dozens of Chinese restaurants, several cafes and bakeries, along with Thai and Vietnamese food. Just north of Chinatown or Canal Street is Little Italy, a slender sliver that is mostly located on Mulberry Street. That's where there's a cluster of Italian food, along with a few cafes and bakeries. Beyond those neighborhoods, there's probably every country's cuisine you can think of somewhere in the city. While many of New York's most famous cinemas like the Ziegfeld have closed in recent years, there are still several multiplexes where you can enjoy a new release on a huge screen and state-of-the-art sound. Some of the cinemas with the greatest numbers of screens can be found on 42nd Street, just west of Broadway. You want to go out for a drink after dinner? You're in luck. There are many bars and lounges in the city to cater to a range of tastes. There are bars populated with NYU students or New York University, surrounding Washington Square, and in neighborhoods such as Hell's Kitchen in the West 40s and 50s, and in the East Village, not far from Parsons School of Design. All that can be done on a budget, particularly if you go to TKTS for discount theater tickets. What's likely to deplete your wallet is housing. Whether it's a hotel, hostel, or Airbnb, a place to lie your head seldom comes cheap in New York. There are rooms and apartments for all budgets, but mostly in the mid to upper range. Which brings us to the rest of the city. If you're committed to saving on lodging and you're flexible about location, you might consider looking further uptown or in Queens, for instance. Brooklyn has deals, yet Staten Island is a ferry ride away and thus not as convenient as the other boroughs. The Bronx as well has few hotel options. What about recreation and exercise? The city has plenty to offer in that area, from massive parks like Central Park to an extensive bike share program. There are also many gyms located throughout the city, some that offer short-term membership options, even for the day. Equinox is an upscale choice, while Blink, part of the same corporation, is more affordable. There's also Chelsea Piers, located on the Hudson River in far west Chelsea. There you'll find a range of activities available to help keep you fit during your visit. You want to go shopping? Boy, are you in luck. While many people have switched out in-store for online shopping, there are still plenty of brick-and-mortar options in NYC. The biggest store in the world is Macy's, located in Herald Square, just south of Times Square, near Madison Square Garden. They're one of the only big department stores left in the city, and while their selection is broad, it might be overwhelming for those looking for a more intimate shopping experience. Smaller and more upscale and trendy Bloomingdale's on the Upper East Side is a popular option. For the suburban mall shopping experience, there's the Time Warner Center, with a Whole Foods supermarket in the basement, clothing stores, upscale shops like Tiffany's selling luxury goods, and even a music venue called Jazz at Lincoln Center, and that's located in Columbus Circle. For the outdoor boutique shopping experience, head to Soho, where you will find some of the same upscale shops as Time Warner Center, but with more variety, along with artists selling their creations on the crowded sidewalks. A highlight of Soho is the sleek flagship location of a mini chain of independent bookshops called McNally Jackson. While The Strand is the largest and most famous of New York's indie bookshops, McNally Jackson offers a more refined browsing experience. For those adventurous types up for traveling beyond the touristy Midtown area, there's plenty of hearty, authentic, and affordable Dominican and Puerto Rican food to be found in Upper Manhattan's Washington Heights and Inwood barrios, the northernmost neighborhoods in Manhattan. There you will find vibrant street life with Spanish as likely to be heard spoken as English, and sidewalks thick with vendors selling all sorts of budget-friendly items, from colorful phone cases to socks and very much in between. And that's just Manhattan. For what's arguably the home of the best Chinese food in New York, head to Main Street Flushing in Queens for a quality over quantity selection of restaurants where it's hard to find anything less than a memorable meal. Brooklyn has one of the city's best art museums in the Brooklyn Museum of Art and acclaimed performing venues like the Brooklyn Academy of Music, or BAM, where you're more likely to see theater than music. That's where some of the boldest theater in the city is performed, often by international theater companies. There's so much to recommend New York for a visit. There are sporting events by the likes of the Yankees who play in the Bronx, and the Mets in Queens for baseball, and the Knicks for basketball in Madison Square Garden, along with the Rangers for hockey in winter. When the cold weather arrives, you can get on the ice yourself and rent a pair of skates in Central Park and in Rockefeller Center. Now that you know what to see and do, how to get to all of it. New York has the nation's most extensive mass transit system, from the subway to the bus system, along with hundreds of yellow taxis as well as Uber and Lyft drivers all over town. The mass transit system, or MTA, runs 24 hours a day. Yet when traveling after 11 p.m. or so, you might want to consider a taxi or a car hire. The subway can be a bit unpredictable, as so many random strangers crammed into a tight space might result in chaos and mayhem. In sum, keep your wallet and wits about you when visiting this great city full of fun and adventure.